Welcome to this new series where I shall be playing Abyssea. I used to think that Abyssea was just a one-dimensional fire nation, just fire and nothing else. But it turns out they're quite a lot more complicated to play and also have a lot more up their sleeves than just heat and fire. Now, if you look at this page, they are very much built around heat. Radiate heat, they have fire resistance, and they prefer a heat scale of 3. They are, however, also not as affected by death and growth scales as normal nations. The scales do not affect supplies at all, and the effects on income and population growth are halved, so it is possible to not put as much into your growth scale as you would with almost every other nation. And then as an added benefit, they have extra gold and resources in cave forts. Now, this is only useful if you end up with a cave, and then it might not even influence your decision making whether or not to build a fort there as much anyway, because forts are usually where they are for strategic reasons. For their military, they have no missile weapons, which can be a bit of a problem, but you can usually just recruit independent archers or crossbowmen somewhere. And everything is in plate armor, well, except the human bred, they are in leather armor, but we'll get to that. And they have salamanders. The salamanders I will discuss in detail in a bit. Now their magic isn't just fire, it's also blood, astral and some birds, and this is actually quite important. Now, you can actually add nature to this list because you really want a nature mage. Even if you just get nature 1 shamans from provinces where tribes live, which is what I tend to do, that already makes your nation a lot more powerful. The priests are powerful and can perform blood sacrifices. I haven't needed the blood sacrifices much, but they could work as a way to spread heat. The minion spreads a heat of 2 maximum. I think this is on top of your scale, so if you have a heat scale of 3, that already increases heat. And then the Dominion increases the heat 2 more, so you'll have quite a bit of heat, which is generally what you want. There's an exception, but I might discuss that in some detail later on. The Blessing also gives an extra point of fire, so they definitely have a big dose of fire, but trust me, there's more to it. And the forts are standard forts. Now let's go over the commanders first. You have the Slayer. The Slayer has 2 poison daggers, and the daggers come with a strong poison of 15, which means that even if you just scratch a 10 hit point human and then the human kills you, he may still die before the assassination is over, so he has a good chance of assassinating a human-sized opponent. However, what's missing here is the ability to scale walls, which means that he can only assassinate an opponent who is not hiding in a fort, which most valuable targets usually are, so he's of limited use. Then there's the Beast Trainer. The Beast Trainer has 4 animal all, so I thought about this. Maybe if you're fighting against Bandar Log, he would be able to tug against Tiger Riders or other monkey troops. However, that's a very specific situation, and I would be building a tug with 19 hit points, which is not great. I probably wouldn't do it, but I would have to test it first to come to a final verdict on that strategy. The Beastmaster also comes with an a Beastmaster of 3. But his leadership is 10, so this is -1 squad morale, and then this gives +3 squad morale to animals, which would end up with +2, which would seem quite nice. However, the next guy, the Warlord, has a leadership of 80, which already gives +1, so it's only 1 less morale than you get from being with the Warlord, so very niche. And since the Beast Trainer can only lead 10 animals, I can see situations where I just don't build a Beastmaster the entire game. The Warlord is just your standard 80 leadership leader. 80 leadership leaders are nice because 80 leadership allows you to use formations, and anything below that doesn't. So being able to put things into lines instead of just a blob is actually quite important, especially for this nation, but for most nations it's quite useful. Other than that, he's reasonably unremarkable, except for the fact that he has quite heavy armor and 19 hit points, so a random short bow arrow will not just kill him outright, which is always nice. Then there's the Anantamant Salamander. This is the first of your Anantamant mages. These are the priestly class of Abyssia. This one is, however, not all that useful. He costs 185 gold, and that's the biggest thing that makes him kind of, well, he's just overpriced. You could use him as a Fire 2 mage, but then again, 185 gold is quite expensive for a Fire 2 mage. He has also Holy 2, Priest level 2. However, Priest level 2 kind of falls into a niche where it's only really all that useful to fight undead. But Fire 2 is already pretty good at fighting undead, so that's really redundant. He could do Phoenix Power and then cast a big fire elemental. I guess that's how I'd use him, but I wouldn't feel good at using a 185 gold mage just to summon a single fire elemental there. I would do that in different ways. And his upkeep is also 74 gold a year, so getting 9 resource points for that much is also really overpriced. So I am kind of inclined to get not that many of these salamanders. Then there's the Anantamant Dragon. These are better. They have 3 fire and 3 priest level, which 3 fire over true fire isn't that big a deal. Priest level 3 is infinitely better than priest level 2 because you can cast Smite, you can cast Divine Blessing and bless the entire battlefield. It's much more useful. Now, he also comes with an Earth level of 1. This makes him immediately more useful for side searching and more useful in combat. It will also allow you to cast a national combat spell, which is basically a much improved fireball, and fireballs are already quite nice. So yeah, this guy I would definitely build a few of, even though his upkeep is 114, which is something in the region of 1.5 times the upkeep of the previous guy, and he doesn't have double the research points, so I wouldn't get these for research either, but for side searching and for combat they would definitely be quite useful. And then there's the Warlord Apprentice. The Warlord Apprentice is, well, early on you can build a few of these for research. because at least he comes with a research ability of 11 as opposed to this guy who has 9. So that's already better. He's cheaper to buy but more expensive to upkeep because he's not sacred. So I would not recommend getting an infinite amount of these. Neither could you, because they can only be recruited in the capital. But early on I tend to get quite a few. They are also reasonably useful as blood hunters, because they are a blood mage level 2. And they come with an astral path, which at least allows them to go into communions without having to spend a blood slave and a lot of fatigue. It also allows them to cast some astral blood, like what are they called? Horrors. Yeah, you can summon horrors with these guys. And with the right items you can even remote summon horrors with these guys, which would put the horror marks you can get from that on a cheap mage as opposed to this one, the warlock, which is a lot more expensive. Now, the next one is a bit of an odd one. It's the Demon Bread. He also comes with Blood 2 and with Blood Searcher 1. So he's a significantly better Blood Searcher. But Blood Searcher 2 is usually already good enough. He is however flying, so when you're raiding an opponent you can fly into his territory that you just raided, blood hunt a bit for a bunch of blood slaves and a lot of unrest, and then when it looks like your opponent is going to counter raid you, you just fly away, leaving him with a province with less population and a whole lot of unrest. So doing a lot of economic damage that way. He also is a higher blood fire crossbat in case I need that. I would not use him in direct combat, and his uses as a battle mage are limited. However, if you just need a fire or blood 2 mage in a battle quickly, he can fly. So he can actually show up to a battle and the rest of your stuff is really slow, so it gives you some strategic mobility, but for quite a high price. As you can see, he costs 265 to recruit. He is sacred, which puts his upkeep at 106. So yeah, it is not that expensive to maintain them. Same as these guys actually. These guys are actually more expensive to maintain, so in that regard, for upkeep they wouldn't even be the worst blood hunters. However, capital only and 4 recruitment points, so 2 turns to recruit. So by recruiting one of these you miss out on 2 of these or 2 warlocks, because the warlocks cost 2 recruitment points. So moving on to the warlock. The warlock is expensive at a 285 gold. And his upkeep is 228 gold. So every 12 months you basically pay for him again. Then he has the highest astral and the highest blood you can get. On top of that, he has a guaranteed random, which can be more astral or more blood. So these are definitely also side searchers. Now he can random into fire, which gives him a blood fire crosspath, which is necessary to summon fiery imps. And fiery imps are really cheap patrollers, which can keep the unrest under control in the provinces where I'm getting the blood slaves. So the good thing about this is that you're using blood slaves in order to patrol to get more blood slaves, so it just expands and doesn't really cost anything else, except for of course the upkeep on this guy. Other than that, you can use him as the crossbreeder because he has the highest in crossbreed stat, and you have a national crossbreed spell with Abyssia. So if you want to get the most out of the blood slave you're putting into that, you should crossbreed with a warlock. A Warlock Apprentice can also do it, but he only has Crossbreeder 2. So you will get less return on investment. So I really recommend always using the Warlock as your Crossbreeder. That's about the use of the Warlock. I would definitely always keep some Warlocks around. Just not, well, too many, because they're really expensive. Then there's the troops. Let's start with the Sacred Troop, the Lava Warrior. Because it's sacred, it will have Arblast, and that will make a big difference. He has 2 Morning Stars. The Morning Stars, when you see 2 damage types, they do one of the damage types, so 50% chance to do a blunt attack, 50% chance to do a pierce attack. So half of these attacks are going to be 20 pierce damage. You need a lot of armor to resist 20 pierce damage. They also have 2 extra attack against shields, so they already have an attack skill of 11. Against a shield that becomes a 13. On top of that, if they're wounded, they're Berserker 3, so then it becomes an attack skill of 14, plus 2 is 16, which is about the defense skill of something like a mounted elf. So then they would hit those 50% of the time with 2 attacks. So these are quite good at beating through almost anything. On top of that, they have 18 armor, both on their head and their chest, which can be increased with the Berserker to 21, and then with Barkskin, which I will be casting on them as much as possible, into the mid-20s of armor. So a regular attack they will just shrug it off. Then they have Firepower. Firepower is useful in heat. It increases, I think, strength, attack and defense by 1 for every heat level, so that can go up to 3. Yeah, that would put them at 19 attack. It would put them at 6 defense, but who cares? Their defense is basically just their armor. They will not evade an attack ever, probably. They are ambidextrous, but that's just for wielding the 2 Morning Stars. Otherwise they would have a penalty on those. And they are bad formation fighters. So this means there can go -2 size in a square. You can put 6 size square points in every square. These are size 2, and then -2 means that only 2 of these go into a square, whereas other size 2 fighters go 3 a square. This isn't so bad by itself, because an average unit has only 1 attack and usually a lower quality attack than this. So it will still be 4 attacks per square against 3 attacks per square, so that's pretty alright. However, I found out quite a nasty trick, and I don't know if this is the intent of the creators of the game or if this is just the adverse effect of how Formation Fighter works. Which is, you can put a 3rd unit in the square as long as he doesn't have this trait. And all of your other troops do not have the Bad Formation Fighter trait. So any of these, this one's size 3, so no, the Salamander can't. Any of your other troops can join a square with these guys. Which puts 3 guys in a square, 2 of these and something else. Now, your first instinct, at least that was mine, would be to put a human bred with a spear in there. Because human breds with spears are your only spear units. They have enough fire resistance not to care about the heat aura of your lava warriors. And they would add a repel check to the square. However, this is extremely tricky, because these guys have a combat speed of 7, and these guys have a combat speed of 9. So if you put them together in one squad, what tends to happen is the Human Bred just run ahead of the Lava Warriors. And the Lava Warriors just come in a second line behind them. Then against the enemy, the Human Breds bunch up into squares, so 3 Human Breds per square. And then the Lava Warriors end up wrapping around the Human Breds, 2 Lava Warriors per square. Human Breds for arriving first and not being nearly as heavily armored as the Lava Warriors tend to get killed. And then the Lava Warriors fight it out as if the Human Breds weren't part of that army at all. So, even though on paper it might look nice, and if you get your positioning just right, it might work. You would have to put them in 2 different squads. You would have to put the squads in the exactly right position. It would be a lot harder to get Barkskin on all the squads. So, less than ideal, even though the repel check would be nice. Then there's the Abyssinian infantry with shields, which would be good because they are at least really survivable. However, they have a combat speed of 5. So they would lag behind and the Lava Warriors would have to fight a few rounds without them before they could. Would be 3 units per square, which would kind of defeat the purpose because you don't want to lose Lava Warriors if you can avoid it. The Salamander is out because he's size 3, so he will not fit in a square with them. Also, the Salamander is really bad, but more on that later. So the only thing that rests me is Abyssinian infantry with either a flail or an axe, because these are combat speed 7 as well. So what I tend to do is I get 2 of these and one of the one with the axe. The flail would work just as well, I suppose, but I like to have some variety of weapons in my square, so if there's anything the flails are bad against, the axe is good. Alright, so that's how to use the Lava Warriors, which will also be demonstrated quite a bit in the videos after this. The Human Breds. So the first Human Bred has an axe. This is a 19 damage axe, which is quite good. It will still go through medium armor, which in the Middle Age, which this nation plays in, you will need quite a bit medium armor. So being able to at least reliably chop through that is quite useful. And they have a big tower shield, which greatly increases their survivability, because it gives them a defense of 13, and tower shields are also quite good against missiles. He has a fire resistance of 15. All my units have fire resistance. This is actually the lowest fire resistance, but it's still good. It still makes him immune to any fire auras by other units, or fire spells that end up in the wrong spot generally. And even if you can cast Barkskin on him, which I recommend doing, he will still have 10 fire resistance left, which is still pretty good. He comes with a protection of 9. Barkskin will increase that to a decent amount, but by itself it's not that great. However, he is wearing a 16 protection cap, so arrows that tend to hit the head more will not impress him that much. And 12 hit points. So, pretty okay. And the good thing about this one in particular is that it's for upkeep, it's the cheapest, 10 gold a year, which is still a lot for basically a human, but it's the cheapest you got. Then there's the other Human Bred with the spear. This is a very standard spear, 14 pierce damage. It does have the ability to repel shorter weapons. Same deal, tower shield, fire resistance. This one is already one more expensive to upkeep, and also more expensive to build. I think also by 1, 13, 14. So there is a consideration of, is it worth having the spear over the axe? And yeah, they both come with a ring mill and yeah, same armor. Okay. They are good for blocking the enemy and keeping them busy. So if you have a flank to your army, you just want to keep the enemy there so you can chuck fire evocations at them or wait until another flank beats through the enemy. They are the cheapest way of just holding them up. Well, then there's all of the 4 types of Abyssian infantry. There's the one with the big battle axe. It's a 25 damage battle axe, which is quite nice. And an attack of 11 is decent enough. Their armor in combination with bark skin will keep them alive, their defense will not. And all Abyssians have a heat aura of 3. Which means they cause fatigue around them to things that don't have fire resistance. And randomly set fire to things. Including your own commanders if you're not careful. There's the variety with the flail. The flail does only 19 damage, but it does have 2 attacks and an attack bonus against shields. So if you're fighting a lot of stuff with low defense or a lot of stuff with shields, you want to maybe use these instead. Then there's the one with the shield and the axe. It's similar to the human bred with the shield and the axe, except for that he has heavier armor, fire aura, a little bit more hit points, and yeah, that's about it. So yeah, these are your high quality blockers if you want those, but do be aware that they cost about more than 50% more, so you will end up with less of these than the human bred. And then there's also these guys, which you can't do with the human bred, which is they have morning stars like the lava warriors. So if you have a big empire and you can't just rely on your capital's production of lava warriors, you could start using these as your morning stars. They do, however, have only 1 morning star with 1 attack. This is not a flail, but it has the 11 attack, 2 bonus against shields, pierce potential, which the flail does not, by the way. So if you have things in heavy armor with shields, like, I don't know, the Roman type troops I think have medium armor, but still useful. Ulmish troops can have shields, but usually not the Ulmish troops I would build. Anyway, this does have some potential against that. Then again, heat aura. So yeah, they might be useful in that regard. However, do keep in mind these have a combat speed of 5, so if you combine these in a front line with anything else, it will mess formations up. Then last, and unfortunately also least, is the Salamander. The Salamander has this attack, the Fire Flare, which is a high quality attack. It has an area of effect 1, and it does 20 magical fire damage, which is armor piercing. So this can delete a square of humans. If they do not have stuff to protect them against this, regular humans will die. However, there are summons a little later on in the game, like year 1, if you prepare it right, that have the same attack and are, in my opinion, a lot less pricey than this guy. He is undisciplined, which is bad because you can't really control their movements. You can't put them on hold and attack, they will just run forward. So you will have to adapt your entire formation against that. They have firepower, which is, I suppose, the only other positive thing about them. However, firepower can also be a negative if you're in a cold province. It is -1 to everything, it's usually improving. They're an animal, which is really bad. There are some spells that specifically target animals. It has heat, aura, and wasteland survival, standard Abyssian stuff. Okay, very nice. They're size 3, so they will be bad in formations. You can only fit 2 in a square, and they don't fit well into a square amongst other things. So usually your squares of salamanders will be just that. They have a combat speed of 12, so they run ahead of everything and die because they have a protection of 10. The protection of 10 cannot be increased because the protection of 10 cannot be increased because if you cast Barkskin on it, it will probably become 11 because it's natural protection. And then on top of all that, they cost 50 gold to build and they cost 40 gold a year to maintain. Compare that to a Lava Warrior, which costs 30 to build and 12 to maintain. I would much rather have 5 Lava Warriors than 3 Salamanders, because these guys will actually survive. So, no. And 40 gold maintenance. If we look at this guy, he costs 74 gold maintenance. So you can either maintain a Salamander, which I already called overpriced, or you can maintain 2 of these Salamanders. Yeah, I don't see the point in building these Salamanders. I know from other people that there are ways in which you can use them in expansion. If you put your formation just right, they can delete some troops while the other troops hold up the enemy. I don't think it's worth the money, but that might just be a matter of personal opinion.